Coming up, we've got the very first of our Dinos with Sally and Dudley driving. Absolutely. Such a pretty car, the Ferrari Dino, of course, the GTS. And this car is totally original. Original paint, original interior. And Sally was saying to me that this was actually a Christmas present that she bought for Dudley about 40 years ago. Now, isn't he a lucky boy to receive a Ferrari Dino for Christmas? And you were, yes, but you're lucky to have him. But I was very generous with you. He must have been a very good boy that year because he got a Ferrari Dino for Christmas. So it's a totally original car. They had two other Dinos, the 206, which is a racing version, and a Formula 2 Dino. And so, of course, the road-going version was the next logical step in the collection. And as I said, I just love the fact that she gave it to him for Christmas. I wish my wife would buy me a Dino for Christmas.
And I'm delighted, guys. Sally and Dudley, they are huge stalwarts of Salon Privé over the years and what we do. You've entered many cars, and I'm delighted that you've won class winner. Well done, congratulations. A little story from Dudley. The price that Sally paid for this, £15,000. Within 2 months, it had halved in value.
But luckily for him, it's worth a bit more than that now. Thank you. Fabulous. Great car, and listening to the stories behind all of these cars is probably one of my favorite parts. Ah, Mr. Janssen. We're on to Class E now, ladies and gentlemen. This is a class for Bugatti, pre-war Bugatti. And what you see here in front of you is a fabulous little Bugatti. It's called a Type 13. When it first came out, it was much smaller than all the other cars that it was competing against. And it went to the French Grand Prix at Le Mans, surprisingly, with beating the big Alfa Romeos and the Bentleys, even though it was such a small car. Then later that year, it went to Italy for the Italian Grand Prix. At the time, was taking part in Brescia, and it came first, second, and third with the little car. And so from then on, it was nicknamed the Bugatti Brescia. And still today, it is a fabulous car to drive. This is where Bugatti started. This is one of the very first cars that he produced, and it was a huge success. Although it looks small and it looks like it probably wouldn't be very fast, you would be surprised. Driving it, it's such a sweet, light and nimble little Bugatti, and at the time was a hugely popular model. Of course, quite expensive to buy, not that everyone could afford a Bugatti, but a very popular Bugatti Type 13, and that's really where Ettore Bugatti was able to start his company. This is the beginning of the Bugatti brand.
And well done, Will. Runner-up in the class. Congratulations, mate. Well done.
It was all about being light and nimble at that time. Next up, we have something that's a little bit more modern, if that's what we can say. It's a 1928 Bugatti. It's a Type 44. So this was Bugatti's car that was, I don't want to say made for the masses, but certainly a lot more popular. Now what's really interesting about this Type 44 is that it has this spectacular Glangloff body. It's called a profilé aerodynamique. So the idea, of course, is that it's a very aerodynamic body. This is, you know, when they started thinking about how the air was affecting the design of cars and how we can make them quicker by having more aerodynamic bodies. Now it may not look very aerodynamic, but if you look at the rake of the windscreen, and it's so flat and such an interesting shape. Another great feature of this car, if you've had a chance, is to look at the interior of the car. It really is Art Deco. It's almost like sitting in an Art Deco living room with that intricate cloth inside, which was very common at the time. You have to remember that in this era, you could have a car built exactly how you wanted it. You could have the body that you wanted, you could have the interior that you wanted. It would be just a chassis that was delivered to the body makers, and then they would design whatever style you wanted. So thank you very much for bringing the Type 44 Aerodynamique. Fabulous car. Now we have a magnificent car, a 1933 Bugatti Type 55 Roadster. The Type 55 Roadster is the best of the best. There is no more important Bugatti than a Type 55. To put it into context for you, the Type 55 was built based on the Type 51. Type 51 being a Grand Prix car. So if you can imagine, there were some wealthy clients of Bugatti at the time, in the 1930s, that loved the Grand Prix car and wanted something that was just as quick. So they went to Bugatti and said, take the Grand Prix car and put a two-seater body on it. To give you an example, it's like if you went to McLaren today and said, I love your Formula One car, can I have a two-seater body on that McLaren Formula One chassis? That's exactly what they did at the time. So really quick and very, very, very fast. One of the most important Bugattis in existence, and this is probably the most original car that there is. It's a very rare car and very, very, very original. And interestingly, the design of the body was done by Jean Bugatti himself, whom was, of course, Ettore Bugatti's son. So you saw it kept it all in the family. One of the interesting complaints reading about this car in the period is that it didn't have any doors, as you'll notice here. There was no doors to get it in, and one of the wealthy clients of Bugatti at the time had written a very interesting letter complaining that this very expensive car didn't even have a door. So a fabulous Type 55, the king of the road when it comes to Bugattis.
Thank you, Max. Bob Bishop, we first met in Villa Island 3 years ago. It's a very chance meeting. All the way over from America, many international entrants here today. 17 in total have flown over from all over the world. South Africa, Singapore and America. Bob, thank you so much for bringing her, and you have won best in your class. Congratulations.
Well deserved, all the way from America with the Bugatti Type 55. Such an honor to have this car here. So rare to see them, so exciting to see them here. On to Class F, ladies and gentlemen. Oops, please don't run me over. Pre-war luxury tours, 1925 Hispano H6B. A very interesting car. Originally designed or with a hooper body and ordered by a Maharaja for his lovely wife or lady at the time, and I had fitted to it a bell so that when she was arriving in towns or when she was arriving at home, she could ring the bell to forewarn of the arrival of a very important and very noble person, which I thought was quite a nice little touch for this cars. The Hispano Suizas at the time were the most luxurious. It was one of the top brands that were producing cars in the 1930s. It was a combination, of course, of a Swiss engineer with some Spanish backing, but actually built in France. This particular car actually then lost its body, and it was then married together with this body that you see now, which I think was from a Bentley. So again, an example of how in the 1930s a chassis and an engine could have more than one more than one style. It wasn't like today that you just buy a two-door coupe and it has to stay that way. There was a time where this car was also with a saloon body. So a very interesting Hispano, and I like the story of the Maharaja, whom incidentally never actually took delivery, but specified it with the bell so that he could, or she could forewarn people as she was coming into towns. Thank you very much for bringing the H6B here to Salon Privé. Many of the cars have a lever inside the cockpit which you can pull to open the exhaust and make it, let's say, a little bit louder. Alfa Romeo HC. Probably the ultimate pre-war car, one of the ultimate pre-war cars to drive on the road. And this car is exactly as the Alfa Romeo Le Mans cars. We were just discussing this morning that there was a rule at Le Mans, at the 24 Hours of Le Mans. First of all, the cars that competed at the time had to have 4 seats, nothing like what you see today. And the other very interesting rule is that cars that competed at the Le Mans 24 Hours, just like this Alfa Romeo you say here, also had to have a top. And they, during the race, had to put the top up on the car and do a certain number of laps with the top up, and then of course put the top down. Now interestingly, if you see an equivalent Bentley, it's a much taller car with a top that sticks out. The Italians made something that was a more sleeker, still with the 4 seats, which you'll see 2 being behind here, and the top, which was nicely hidden away. The 8C Alfa is, if you speak to collectors, probably the ultimate pre-war car. You speak to the collectors around the world and they'll say to you, what is the best, what is the most desirable pre-war car, what's the best one to drive? And they'll come with the Alfa 8C as an answer. 8C, why? Because it's an 8-cylinder car, and the performance of this car is actually quite mind-boggling, of course, for a car built in the 1930s.
Thank you, Max. And this car, and in particular this owner, is very special to Salon Privé. Mihai Negrescu has been coming to Salon Privé with cars for 7 years now, which is quite phenomenal. Mihai, I hope it's another 7 and it carries on in the future. We're delighted to give you the prize of the Spirit Award here for Salon Privé 2018. Congratulations.
Congratulations, Mihai. That car is absolutely fantastic, and it's great to see Mihai in his cars because he really does drive them. So many remain away in garages, but you're always out in your cars, which is fantastic to see. Now look at this car. Delage, ladies and gentlemen, 1937 Delage D8-120, and what a magnificent Delage this is, absolutely. This particular car was bodied by a Parisian coach builder, Henri Chaperon. One of the most elegant Delages that I've seen in a long time. I was looking at it today, and the detail of the very flamboyant exhausts coming out on the side, a little bit similar to what they were doing in America, was actually quite uncommon to see this styling feature for a car designed and built in Europe. This is the best of the best when it comes to French manufacturing. Delage was one of the luxury brands in France in the 1930s. Unfortunately, they then went under, and Chaperon was one of the best, one of the most opulent, one of the most luxurious coach builders of that era. So 2 brands married to make this stunning, stunning piece of art. Reportedly, this was actually appropriated itself, or it was taken by a French general during the war that was helping out the German army, and after the war he left France and tried to go to America with his car. He sent the car to America, the car arrived, and he then got on a plane or went to America, but he didn't get a visa. He wasn't allowed to stay. So unfortunately, he had to leave his car in America, unfortunately for him. He, the French general, then went on somewhere else, and the car got sold to the Hollywood movie industry. And it's a car, actually, interestingly, that has seen in movies such as An American in Paris. So this is the actual car used in some of the scenes of that movie. It was slightly modified at the time with the help of Chaperon. But interesting that this is actually the car that was used in the movie An American in Paris, and I have to say, it is a true French work of art.
Absolutely, Max. And ladies and gentlemen, when you turn up at these Concours events and you take a walk around the lawns, there are some cars that just catch your eye instantaneously, and you know they're going to win an award. I'm delighted this is going to win 2 awards today, guys. Most opulent, first of all, please, Jamie, if we can. And then the most prominent award that can be bestowed on the car, of course, is class winner. So congratulations, guys. Well done indeed. Congratulations.
Congratulations on the award. Very, very well deserved. Notice one of the styling features of the Delage is the fully faired-in rear spare tyre. Most cars had sort of a outer without a fairing, whereas this car fully faired in. And now, it is great to see two similar cars yet so different. Here we have the equivalent, but from Lancia. Just now we saw the Delage. It was a French car, clothed and bodied by a French bodybuilder. Here we have exactly the same thing, but from Italy. The Lancia Astura, which was one of the very best Lancias you could buy at the time. The Lancia Astura in Italy was used by heads of state, was used by very wealthy industrialists. It was the top of the line when it came to Lancia in the 1930s. And of course, this car and this body was done by Boneschi of Milan. So one of the very opulent, one of the very intricate bodybuilders of the time. It would have cost an absolute fortune for the first owner, who was a very important industrialist. And then during the war, he passed away, and the car was stashed away by his widow, which I thought was a very nice story. She hid it in a barn, and it survived the war, and it stayed there until the late 50s, until it was discovered again. So a Lancia Astura, so the very top of the range, with an Italian Boneschi body, which is a very rare car. Out of the cars with this body, I think is probably the only one, or one of very two, that still survives today. It is really a rare car to see, and I think one of the most beautiful pre-war Italian cars, certainly one of the most important pre-war Lancias.
Absolutely, Max. And this class, you probably knew it, Laurenti, when you turned up this morning, was one of the most difficult classes on the whole show field. You caused the judges a real headache with this one. It's a stunning car. It's won 2 prizes today, so class runner-up, first of all, congratulations. And then Laurenti, I'm also allowed 1 prize on the lawn out of 27 prizes awarded today. And I'm delighted to present you the Chairman's Award, so congratulations.
Fantastic. 2 prizes for the Lancia Astura. If you look at the amount of chrome on this car, it's just very, very impressive. Thank you, Laurenti. Thank you for bringing the car. You've got to put these cars in context. You've got to imagine in 1930s, you know, in Milan, or it could be in London, and this car driving down the road. It must have been an amazing sight, such a large car coming in. Something very, very different, something that we don't see very often at all. This is the 1939 Steyr 220 Cabriolet. So this a car with a very unique car, actually, which was bodied in Austria by carrosserie glazer. One of the very few surviving cars, and it had just 2 owners from new. And the current owner found it, and it was in a terrible, terrible state. You have to think about the owners, the caretakers of these cars. They invest time and money to research the cars and to restore them. And this was a project that took years and years to find out the colors, to find out what the color combination should have been. So this, a very, very unique, very rare car. There's about 5 of these cars left in the world, and certainly this is the only one which has been restored to this level. A painstaking restoration. They were showing me the pictures from all the work and all the research that was done. There isn't any records as to exactly the colors of these cars, and most of the photographs from period are in black and white. So it's a real forensic job to try and understand the original specification, and when the cars are restored, to get them to this level. Such a magnificent car, and a very rare Steyr that we have here.
Thanks, Max. It's a stunning car. Thank you so much for bringing it. And Max, you talk about that painstaking restoration. There's no wonder the judges here have voted this most sensitive restoration for 2018. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
"20 years of work." Phenomenal.
Thank you very much.
20 years of work of researching and restoring this car. I think it's well deserved, and one of the first times that it's been out in public. Fabulous, fabulous pre-war cars, absolutely magnificent. Now we move on to another class, Class G. It's the Grand Tours of the 50s and the 60s. Always good to see a lady driving the car. Makes a nice change. So this car, the Aston Martin, I think as I told you before, this is actually the DB24. So DB Aston Martin was purchased by David Brown. He actually took over Aston in 1947, and this was one of the very first models that came out from the Aston Martin factory. Incidentally, they say, or it is reported, that David Brown bought Aston Martin for a mere £20,000. Now in 1947 there would have been a lot more money, but it doesn't seem like it's a very expensive company to buy. And he then kept it until 1972, and some of the best Astons, like this DB